Every crisis has it before.
Yeah.
Before the 911 call.
Yeah.
Before the hospitalization. Before the tragedy.
Right.
It's just such a chilling but incredibly clarifying thought to start with today.
It really is.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to explore exactly that window of time, that before.
Yeah, that specific quiet window.
Exactly. We are looking at how K-12 schools are fundamentally shifting from like a model of reactive crisis management.
Right, waiting for the fire.
Yeah, waiting for the fire.
Yeah.
And shifting to proactive preventative mental health systems.
Which is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is. And the sources we're unpacking today for you, they're a mix of informational texts and program outlines.
Specifically looking at Georgia, right?
Yes, focused on some upcoming state legislation in Georgia and a really specific initiative called MentalSpace tool, which was designed to meet those new laws.
Got it.
And all of this material, it basically forces us to look at that exact window of time.
It's a critical shift in perspective, honestly, because, I mean, we are so culturally conditioned to just focus on the response to a crisis.
Oh, totally.
You know, we look for the sirens, the emergency protocols, the lockdown drills.
Right, the visible stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But those are, by definition, reactive. The damage is already happening.
Yeah.
What we are looking at today is the actual architecture of prevention. We are asking how to build a structure that recognizes the signals before the sirens are ever needed.
Which requires an entirely different set of tools.
Yeah.
Right, not just crisis response.
Completely different. Yeah.
You know, when I was reading through the materials, the analogy that immediately came to mind was inspecting a dam.
Oh, I like that.
Right. It's like we are finally looking at the structural integrity of this massive concrete dam before it bursts.
Rather than just waiting at the bottom of the valley.
Exactly. Waiting at the bottom, just hoarding life rafts to hand out to the survivors. We're actively trying to spot those, like, microscopic cracks in the concrete.
Right.
But the thing is, human behavior isn't concrete.
No, it's very messy.
It's messy. It's totally unpredictable. So how do we actually build a school system to spot these microscopic behavioral cracks?
Well, that is the defining challenge for educators and administrators right now, because honestly, crisis prevention cannot just be it can't just be a motivational slogan painted in the hallway near the cafeteria.
Right. Be kind.
Right.
Yeah.
Hang in there. It has to be a rigorous, functioning infrastructure.
Which we haven't historically had.
No, historically, our approach to student mental health has largely been based on hope.
Oh, wow.
We hope a teacher notices a subtle change in a student's behavior. We hope a school counselor happens to have an open door and, like, a free hour at the exact moment a student feels brave enough to walk through it.
Which is so rare.
And we hope a parent knows who to call. But hope is not a strategy.
No.
Shifting to a preventative system means replacing that hope with a structured, reliable network that's actually ready to catch the signals students are giving us. Because they do give signals.
Just often in the only ways they know how, right?
Exactly.
Because kids don't usually walk up to an adult and hand them a perfectly articulated essay about their deteriorating mental state.
I wish, but no.
Right. They act out, they throw a textbook.
Yeah.
Or, they withdraw completely and just put their head down on the desk for a week straight.
Yeah, those are the microscopic cracks.
Right. So understanding this before window is so crucial. We really need to look at what those signals actually look like in a real school environment before a crisis hits.
And the sources give some very human, very grounded examples of what an effective system looks like on the ground.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
It's a counselor who actually knows a student's name.
Right, because they aren't managing 600 kids alone.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or it's a parent who doesn't have to navigate some terrifying wait list just to get their kid someone to talk to.
Well, and the before window, it can be weeks or it can be months.
Yeah.
During that time, the sheer friction of getting help is often the deciding factor in whether a situation escalates into an actual emergency.
Friction is a great word for it.
Yeah, because if a student is showing clear signs of distress on a Tuesday morning, and the parent is told the earliest available intervention with a licensed professional is 3 weeks away, that is a system failure.
A complete failure.
Yeah.
Because in those 3 weeks, the microscopic crack in your dam analogy.
It turns into a structural fracture.
Yes.
The sources point out that an effective system means having a clear, immediate referral pathway that completely bypasses that friction.
Now, I had a major point of pushback while reading about these pathways.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the text mentions avoiding the Thursday night breakdown.
Oh, right.
And if you're a parent listening to this, you probably know exactly what that implies.
Yeah.
It's the moment the pressure cooker finally pops at home.
Yeah.
a kid melts down over a math assignment, but it's really 3 months of unaddressed anxiety just boiling over.
Exactly. It's never about the math.
Right. But think about the school environment. Teachers are educators.
Yes, they are.
They are trained to teach math, history, literacy. They are not licensed psychologists.
No, they are not.
So how can we expect teachers to be the front line of defense here without completely burning them out? I mean, they already have so much on their plates just trying to get through the curriculum.
That concern is totally valid, and it's the exact reason why a formal system is required.
Okay.
If a school lacks a concrete system, then administrators are inadvertently asking teachers to act as therapists.
Which is a disaster.
It's incredibly unfair, and frankly, it is ineffective because they just don't have the clinical training for it.
Right.
A proper system doesn't turn teachers into therapists. It gives them a highly visible, instantly accessible release valve.
A release valve. I like that.
Imagine a teacher notices a signal. Maybe a student who is normally highly engaged in class is suddenly falling asleep every single day and, reacting aggressively to simple questions.
The clear cracked in the dam.
Exactly. Instead of having to sit that student down and perform an amateur psychological evaluation.
Which they shouldn't be doing anyway.
Right. The teacher simply engages the protocol. They know exactly where to refer that student, and they have a guarantee that the student will be seen by a professional.
Ah, I see.
It completely removes the cognitive and emotional burden from the educator and places it onto licensed professionals where it belongs.
So it's the difference between asking a teacher to, perform an appendectomy in the nurse's office
Lord, yeah.
versus asking them to just know the phone number for an ambulance.
That is a perfect way to look at it. They just need to know the pathway.
And this need for a concrete referral pathway, it isn't just a philosophical best practice anymore either.
No, it's not.
According to our sources, in the state of Georgia, it is becoming a strict legal mandate with a very fast approaching deadline.
Yes, the theoretical is becoming legally binding.
Right. House Bill 268.
HB 268, which takes effect in Georgia on July 1st, 2026.
Which is so soon.
It is. And this legislation fundamentally changes the standard of care for K-12 mental health response across the state. Every single school district is now officially on a clock.
TikTok.
Yeah. The sources indicate that many administrators are currently scrambling to figure out how to comply, because shifting from reactive to proactive, that is an enormous logistical lift.
Let's break down what this new standard of care actually entails, because it is built on 5 key compliance pillars.
Okay, yeah, let's go through them.
First, districts must have documented mental health screening processes.
Very important.
Second, they need crisis response protocols with licensed provider involvement. Third, same-day or next-day access standards for students in need.
That one is huge.
Yeah, same-day access. Fourth, mandatory staff training on identification and referral. And fifth, formal family notification workflows.
Those 5 pillars represent a massive infrastructural shift.
Definitely.
And I really want to highlight that third one you mentioned, same-day or next-day access standards.
Right.
That completely eliminates the 3-week wait list we discussed earlier.
Yeah, that friction is just gone by law.
It legally requires schools to have a mechanism for immediate intervention. And if you think about the reality of a modern public school, where a single counselor might be responsible for hundreds of students
Or more.
guaranteeing same-day access to a licensed professional is a staggering requirement.
It's massive. When I read through these 5 pillars, I couldn't help but think of another analogy.
Bring it on.
This sounds exactly like the school equivalent of passing a massive building code inspection, but for mental health.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got documented processes, workflows, protocols. I always assume the bottleneck for schools is funding, right?
Sure, usually.
But looking at this, it seems like the bottleneck is actually the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So does this run the risk of just becoming a massive paperwork exercise? Like, are schools just going to check boxes to avoid being sued by the state and in the process get entirely distracted from the actual human care of the students?
Well, anytime legislation mandates complex workflows, the risk of bureaucratic bloat is very real. It's a very natural skepticism to have. However, in this specific context, the documentation and workflows are the architecture that ensures a student doesn't fall through the cracks.
Okay, explain that.
Well, a workflow isn't just a piece of paper sitting in a filing cabinet, right? It is a chain of accountability.
Oh, I see.
If a teacher flags a student, A documented workflow guarantees that the family is notified and a licensed provider is engaged within 24 hours.
Tracked.
Yes. Without that mandated architecture, the human element of care fails because everyone just assumes someone else is handling it.
Oh, the counselor will get to it.
Exactly. The paperwork is what forces the human intervention to actually happen on time.
So the red tape is actually forming the safety net.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yes. If legislation demands same-day access, a school district can't just promise they'll try their best.
Right.
They have to prove on paper that they have the providers on standby to make it happen. And that is a daunting, complex puzzle for a school district to solve on its own.
Because they are not hospital systems.
No, they're educational institutions.
Right. Which brings us to how districts are actually supposed to solve this tension, right? Between these heavy legislative mandates and the desperate need for genuine, fast human care.
Right. How do they actually do it?
Exactly. And the sources highlight a specific blueprint being used in Georgia. It's an integrated partnership program called MentalSpace School.
Yes. MentalSpace School is presented in the materials as Georgia's HB 268 aligned partner.
Right.
Essentially, it functions as a turnkey solution for these districts, instead of a school trying to hire a massive team of independent therapists.
Which they can't afford.
Exactly. And trying to build a clinical workflow from scratch, this program provides the system, the providers, the protocols, and crucially, the necessary documentation to satisfy the state statute,
Wow.
all while actively delivering the care students need.
And the details of how this blueprint actually operates are incredibly comprehensive. Like, it's not just a poster with a hotline number on it in the gym.
No, far from it.
It features a 247 crisis response, which directly addresses that Thursday night breakdown we talked about.
Are crucial for the parents.
Absolutely. And they provide dedicated therapist teams assigned to specific schools, so a student isn't just talking to, like, a random voice on a screen every time.
Right, there is continuity of care.
Yeah, continuity of care. They offer same-day teletherapy, fulfilling that really tough legislative pillar.
Yep.
And something that really stood out to me, it goes beyond just the students. The program integrates staff wellness and family counseling, too.
That is huge. A wraparound approach like that recognizes a fundamental truth about psychology. You cannot treat a student in a vacuum.
Right.
If a student receives excellent therapy for an hour, but then returns to a family dynamic that is in active crisis.
Yeah, or walks into a classroom where the teacher is entirely burned out and dysregulated.
Exactly. The student's environment remains unstable. By supporting the staff and offering resources to the family, you are stabilizing the entire ecosystem around the student.
That makes total sense.
It creates a much more resilient foundation for the student's own mental health.
Now, I want to zero in on a very specific detail from the text that caught my eye.
Okay.
It explicitly highlights that MentalSpace School utilizes licensed, diverse therapists who are culturally competent.
Yes.
Now, if our overall goal is to catch signals in that critical before window, how does having culturally competent and diverse therapists actually change the speed at which a student might open up?
That's a great question.
Because speed seems to be the entire game here.
Speed is everything. A student residing in the before window, a student who might be struggling, anxious, or deeply alienated, they will only utilize the system if they feel a baseline level of trust.
Right.
Culturally competent care is not just a buzzword. It operates as a clinical tool for accelerating that trust.
Accelerating trust. I love that.
Yeah, because if a student sits down, even virtually, with a therapist who inherently understands their cultural background, their community context, or just their specific lived experience, an immediate, massive barrier of mistrust is removed.
They don't have to explain themselves.
Exactly. The student doesn't have to spend the first 3 sessions explaining the nuances of their culture or their family's expectations. They can get straight to the pain point.
Wow.
In the context of crisis prevention, this is vital because it significantly speeds up the intervention timeline. The faster the trust is established, the faster the healing can begin.
So it's about reducing the friction to zero. If they feel understood instantly, the before window doesn't close on us.
Precisely.
But speaking of friction, a state-of-the-art, culturally competent mental health system is completely useless if a family is locked out by privacy fears or insurance barriers.
Oh, absolutely, the logistics.
Right. If you're a parent listening, the logistics are usually the very first thing you worry about.
For good reason.
So how does this blueprint actually function in the real world for a normal family?
Logistics will always dictate the ultimate success or failure of a program like this. Always. First, on the privacy front, the sources confirm that MentalSpace School is both HIPAA and FERPA compliant.
Okay, let's unpack that.
This is a massive administrative hurdle that they have solved. IPI governs medical privacy, protecting a patient's health information.
Right.
VERPA governs educational privacy, protecting a student's academic records.
And those usually don't mix.
No. Traditionally, these two worlds do not speak to each other easily at all. A teacher might see a drop in grades, which falls under FERPA, while an outside therapist sees clinical anxiety, which is protected by FERPA.
Right, so they're isolated.
Having a system that is compliant with both means that medical privacy and educational privacy laws are strictly adhered to, allowing safe, legal coordination between the school and the provider.
That's a game changer.
It protects the school district from liability and gives parents peace of mind that their child's sensitive data is totally secure.
And then there's the money.
Always the money.
Always. Accessibility almost always comes down to cost. The sources list that the program is in-network with all major Georgia carriers: Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana, Peach State, CareSource, AmeriGroup.
That covers a lot of ground.
It does. But the line that stopped me in my tracks was this: Medicaid cost is $0.
Yeah, that is incredible. Ensuring Medicaid patients have a $0 copay completely removes the financial barrier for the most vulnerable populations in a school district.
Completely removes it.
It means the decision for a family to seek help for their child is based entirely on clinical need, not on their bank account balance that week.
Right.
When we talk about catching every signal in the before window, you cannot have a system where a parent notices the signal but ignores it because they can't afford the copay.
It defeats the whole purpose.
Exactly.
Well, we can talk about workflows and compliance pillars and privacy laws all day, but the sources share some striking outcomes that show what happens when a school actually implements this level of infrastructure.
The proof is in the
It
data.
really is. The data points to an 89% improved attendance rate,
Wow.
a 92% reduced anxiety rate, and an 85% family satisfaction rate.
Those are staggering numbers.
Right. Looking at that 89% improved attendance stat is just fascinating to me. By treating mental health, you're directly solving one of the most critical academic metrics there is, physical attendance.
Right. The profound connection there is between the 92% reduction in anxiety and a student's simple physical ability to show up to the school building.
Yeah.
We often treat academics and mental well-being as two entirely separate silos in education.
Totally. The math department worries about test scores, and the counseling department worries about well-being.
Exactly. But you cannot separate the mind from the student. If a student is paralyzed by a panic disorder or deeply depressed, they literally cannot get on the school bus.
No.
They cannot sit in a chair and focus.
It makes me think of, like, a computer's RAM.
Okay, how so?
If a student's brain is a computer, severe anxiety is a massive background program eating up 90% of the RAM.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
Right. There's absolutely no processing power left to run the application for learning algebra or analyzing a history text.
Right, because the system is overwhelmed just trying to keep the baseline operating system from crashing.
Exactly. So is it possible that mental health infrastructure is actually the most potent educational tool schools have been missing this whole time?
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanism at play. Knowledge retention and academic curiosity are impossible if the underlying mental space is in active crisis.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
No. By lowering the anxiety, by closing out those overwhelming background processes, you are quite literally returning the student's cognitive capacity to the classroom.
Wow.
The improved attendance isn't just about bodies and seats, it's about students arriving with the mental bandwidth actually required to learn.
That is so powerful. And for those listening who are interested in the specific mechanics of this partnership, the sources do note that the contact route for districts exploring this architecture is mentalspaceschool.com.
A great resource to look into.
Yeah. Well, this has been an incredibly eye-opening journey.
Yeah.
Let's quickly recap what we've explored for you today.
Let's do it.
We started by understanding the critical quiet before window of a crisis, that space where signals exist but often go unseen because schools lack the infrastructure to catch them.
Right.
We look at the ticking compliance clock of Georgia's HB 268, coming up fast on July 1st, 2026,
Ticking very fast.
and how its 5 pillars of systemic prevention are forcing a new standard of care, complete with same-day access and rigorous workflows.
Turning hope into strategy.
Exactly. And finally, we explored how comprehensive partnerships like MentalSpace School are bridging the gap between heavy legislative mandates and the actual human need for accessible, culturally competent teletherapy and wraparound support.
It really represents a profound shift from a reactive posture where we wait for the tragedy to a
Right.
proactive infrastructure, where we actively hunt for the microscopic cracks in the dam.
Exactly. So whether you are a parent trying to navigate a fragmented healthcare system, an educator feeling the burden of being a frontline mental health worker, or just a curious mind listening to this deep dive, understanding how our institutions are shifting from merely reacting to crises to actively building systems that prevent them is highly relevant.
It really is.
It speaks to the health of any community or organization you are a part of. We all benefit when the dam is inspected before it breaks.
Well said. And as we consider this massive systemic shift, this raises an important question I'd like to leave you with today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If legislation like HB 268 successfully does exactly what it intends to do, if it successfully forces schools to build systems that catch every single mental health signal in that before window,
Right.
do we actually have enough licensed therapists nationwide to answer the call?
Oh, wow.
Or will solving the identification problem simply force us to confront an even deeper resource crisis in the mental health profession itself?
That is a heavy, necessary question to ponder as these laws start to roll out.
It really is.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon to unpack another stack of sources. Until then, keep looking for the signals. Take care.